2016 was an interesting year for Magic the Gathering, and it was definitely an interesting year for Standard. In this video, we're going to talk about the most overhyped, underperforming, and downright disappointing Standard cards in 2016. When you think of a card that you thought was going to be good, but then it was crap, that's the list we're about to dive into. Now, before we do that, in case you didn't know, our Kickstarter for our limited edition winter playmat is going on right now. This playmat is only available for 3 more weeks and then never again. If you want to help the channel continue, you can click the link on the screen or in the description to purchase a piece of Manosaurus history. Alright, let's get into it. To be overhyped or to underperform in 2016, a card would need enough time to do either. Which means that for the purposes of this video, we'll be focusing on cards from Magic Origins forward except Kaladesh. Kaladesh hasn't been in Standard long enough for anything to fail just yet. Khans of Tarkir and Fate Reforged were only in Standard in 2016 for a few months, so they are firmly back in 2015. Also, and this is especially important, a card can see play, but still be overhyped. This list is talking about the cards we thought were going to do crazy things. If a card is a sideboard staple, but we all expected it was going to change the format, yeah, that's underperforming. So as we go through this list, keep that in mind. Now with all that said, we'll begin with Magic Origins and move forward in time. Back when Magic Origins was first spoiled, the absolute most overhyped card in the set was Days Undoing. Arguably the fixed version of the Power 9 spell Time Twister, Days Undoing was supposed to warp or even destroy Standard by giving blue such a powerful redraw weapon. The idea was to use this spell when it would give you the most advantage, ideally refilling your hand and refilling your library with all of the powerful spells you'd been casting all game, without any of the pesky lands you already played. Should have been a win-win. The problem was that the downside on the card, your turn ends if it's your turn, was debilitating for it. Never really picking up steam, the card quickly dropped from over $20 to a cool $2 in the matter of a few months. It found rare play in the sideboard of Banned Company before rotation, but nothing close to what we all thought it had the potential for. Now that it's rotated, it sees play occasionally in random modern or vintage decks, but the Undoing has nowhere consistent to call home. What was once touted as a functional reprint by some, now forgotten by many. There were many cards in Magic Origins that raised players' brows, but there were few that gave the older players like me instant nosebleeds when we saw them. Goblin Piledriver was one of those few. Instantly brought back to the horror of goblins in Standard during Onslaught block, a lot of us naturally freaked out. Goblin Piledriver is arguably the most powerful goblin ever printed, responsible for an entire Standard archetype, and one of the key cards in Legacy Goblins. You can understand why we would be a bit scared. The last time we saw this card, it wrecked everyone. Needless to say, we overhyped this card a tiny bit. Now don't get me wrong, goblins had their heyday. Atarka Red, Mono Red goblins, and every variation in between ended up running the Piledriver at some point. The problem? The versions with the Piledriver didn't exactly dominate like everyone thought they would. A card that absolutely destroyed Standard so long ago was just a sidekick now. You can see that reflected in the card's price. Starting at $15, the highest it ever got again would be $4 before the release of Shadows over Innistrad, when for a short period of time there was a popular Goblins deck in Modern, but beyond that, not nearly as powerful as we assumed it might be. Let's move on to Battle for Zendikar, and oh man, if you want to talk about a set with some Standard disappointments, look no further. We'll begin with Kiora, Master of the Depths. Now, before you go crazy, I know it's recently found limited play in Team or Emerge decks. I know that. The problem? There was an 8-month gap between Kiora seeing any semblance of play. Used in a weird variety of decks from late 2015 to early 2016, including the fan favorite blue-green ramp, Kiora never really found her footing. A Simic Walker with decent loyalty, a way to protect herself, sometimes, and card advantage, she was expected to be at least consistently played throughout her tenure in Standard, and that just hasn't been the case. Is she the most overhyped card in this video? Definitely not, but did you expect copies to cost literally $2 a piece? I sure didn't. Probably the biggest disappointment from Battle for Zendikar is Drana, Liberator of Malakir, and this one breaks my heart, even if I don't like aggro decks. Drana was the bee's knees when she was spoiled. Cheap cost, 2 relevant combat keywords, and a monstrously powerful ability, Drana was supposed to lead red-black aggro decks to constant victory. And for a short time last fall, she sort of did. Red-black aggro performed decently after Drana was released, but it didn't take long for the archetype to fall to pieces, overshadowed by the 4-color decks that would plague Standard until the fetch lands rotated earlier this year. But because she was powerful at one time, players held out hope and her price never dipped below $7 until Shadows over Innistrad came out. There must be good vampires here, right? It's Innistrad. Nope. Shadows made white the most powerful color in Magic, and Drana was, once again, left by the wayside. Dropping steadily in price, you can get the vampire ally for a measly $3 now. A far fall from her lofty perch at $20 on release. Sad day. The last Battle for Zendikar card we have to talk about is Undergrowth Champion. A fan favorite, most of us thought this was going to be around for a long time. With a powerful landfall trigger and an ability that refused to let it die, the champion was supposed to spearhead the red-green landfall strategy that Battle for Zendikar laid out. That did not happen. Coming into Standard at an extremely volatile time, Undergrowth Champion simply didn't impact the board fast enough and didn't protect itself against removal well enough. And while some budget landfall strategies did make some waves, some of them didn't even run the champion. By the end of 2015, the Undergrowth Champion was old news, dropping under $4 with the ringing in of the new year. Long drop from its $20 release price. It's still in Standard, and the card is 50 cents. 50 cents! That is a tough break. Bible thump for days. In regards to Oath of the Gatewatch, the set did pretty well comparatively at tempering expectations. Most of the expected good cards are good, most of the expected bad cards are bad. Compared to other Standard sets, this one went pretty much how we expected it to go. If I had to pick a card that was a tad bit overhyped, it'd be Mirrorpool. Yeah, remember that card? Because most players don't. The hope was that you could sacrifice the pool and copy a powerful spell, or copy a powerful creature to abuse and enter the battlefield trigger, or get a second copy before your first copy is removed. A utility card, as it were. Come to find out, no one wanted to pay the mana for that, and no one needed the colorless mana source due to them being readily available elsewhere, and it entered the battlefield tapped. It didn't take long for players to cut ties with this weird mythic. Nowadays it only sees consistent play in Commander, where it follows the Eldrazi legends around. Not much of a life, but a life nonetheless. Moving into Shadows over Innistrad territory, these wounds are going to be a little fresher, so be prepared for that. We'll start with Arlinn Cord. As of right now, I'm okay with saying that this is one of the most innately powerful cards in Standard, but there's just nowhere to put this thing. Now I know it's in the sideboard of some green-red energy decks that are doing well, and maybe a few actual werewolf decks or red-green aggro decks, but come on, be real with me here. Arlinn Cord was supposed to do so much more, as were werewolves in general. After seeing Arlinn's card spoiled, I had the highest hopes for the werewolf tribe, and they made a great budget deck, they really did. Explosive, fun, exciting, but never really tier 1 competitive. And Arlinn couldn't find consistent success elsewhere. It really is a shame, she is so dang powerful. The second disappointment from Shadows, Olivia mobilized for war. Remember our talk about Drana? How Drana was supposed to be the one to bring vampires to the forefront? Guess what? That is exactly what we thought when we saw Olivia. Shadows over Innistrad was just coming out, Vampire Central, and new Olivia looked amazing. Great synergy with Madness, cheap cost, powerful ability, but once again, besides some minor successes, Olivia didn't break open the format. Somehow, even with both Olivia and Drana, the red-black vampire-based deck it couldn't do it. It just couldn't. Which leads to Olivia being on this list. One of the biggest disappointments in Standard this year was vampires not coming back in any truly impactful capacity at a high-level tournament play. Alright, time for Eldritch Moon, the last set we're covering. Decimator of the Provinces was supposed to be the fixed Craterhoof behemoth. We all saw it. This mini overrun granting Eldrazi Boar was supposed to not only impact Standard, but also Modern to a degree. Largely based on the inherent power of the original Craterhoof, the Decimator was designed to be played alongside a go-wide strategy and used solely to overrun the opponent and win the game. And while Craterhoof Behemoth is great at this, the Decimator didn't even have a chance to prove itself. No deck has really come forward with any consistency that can support an all-in card like this. The elf deck that the Behemoth calls home is created specifically to cast it. Nothing in Standard makes this particularly easy to cast, while also allowing you to go wide with enough creatures to win the game. Crazy strong ability, owns Unlimited if you can cast it, but didn't have the tools to make it work in Standard, at least not yet. Personally, this is my number one. This is the most disappointing card in Standard right now, Eldritch Evolution. I cannot fully express to you the excitement players had when they saw the fixed Natural Order. Natural Order is one of the most beloved green cards of all time, and to get a card even remotely like it in Standard, huge deal for a lot of players. The innate power on this card is massive, allowing you to sacrifice any creature and tutor up something larger, putting it directly onto the battlefield. And while tons of interesting combos have been created around the card in both Standard and Modern, neither format has been able to employ the evolution in any meaningful way long term. But this card is so powerful by itself, players still have hope. Look at the foil multiplier on this. Regular copies of this normal rare cost around $2 now, but foils, north of $12. That's a 6 times multiplier. Players still believe in the power of this card, and I hope to Erebos that they find a way to break it, because Eldritch Evolution is friggin' cool. Okay, the absolute last card we need to talk about isn't a disappointment because of its unused power, it's a disappointment because of its existence at all. Ulrich of the Kralin Horde was supposed to be the werewolf commander we've been asking for years. Ulrich was supposed to be something awesome for the format. Finally letting players run a werewolf tribal deck that didn't need to be commanded by Xenagos or some other red-green filler. And sure, Ulrich is a werewolf, but he's a terrible commander, he's just awful. His enter the battlefield effect isn't exciting, and when he flips, it's a removal spell, sometimes. This isn't the kind of impact any of us wanted when we were looking for a new puppy commander. So while no one expected anything from Ulrich in Standard to begin with, you can't blame me for still being a little salty about this, right? Dang it, when's the next time we'll see werewolves again? Ugh. And that's going to do it for this 2016 recap video. Let me know what you think. Do you like this topic? Do you like the style of it all? I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on everything. Also, be sure to let me know which cards were your most overhyped, which cards disappointed you, let you down, made you feel bad and cry for merely existing. You know, the usual. Also, be on the lookout for more videos this weekend and throughout the week. As always, thanks for watching and we'll see you next time. This video is brought to you in part by TCGplayer.com. We've been talking about Standard this whole time, but you know what's coming to Standard? Aether Revolt. Only a month away at this point, Aether Revolt boxes are available on TCG Player for pre-order right now for $92 each. Totally fair price. If you don't have a local game store or your store is charging way too much, get your pre-orders right here. Super easy, fair prices, good service, win-win.